Father, one of the things I wanted to talk about, you mentioned the Byzantine Rite. How did this come to be, where we refer to this as the Byzantine Rite, and a Byzantine Rite, and though we have Ruthenian and Maronite and Ukrainian, they're all Byzantine. Explain that.
Well, actually, the Maronites are not of the Byzantine tradition, okay?
So you've got to be here to correct me.
That's why I... That's why I'm happy you invited me.
Good.
You are right, however, that the Ruthenians, the Ruthenian Byzantine Catholics, of course, follow the Byzantine tradition. You have the Melkite Greek Catholics, a very prominent church in North America. They follow the Byzantine tradition. There, believe it or not, is in fact a Russian version, as it were, of the Catholic Church, which follows the Byzantine tradition. It was a Russian Byzantine Catholic Church. Very, very small group, not more than maybe 15, 20,000 throughout the world. What that simply means is that all of these churches, including the Ukrainian Catholic, adopted a form of Christianity that crystallized, that developed much of its genius and much of the codification of the tradition in Constantinople, which at one time was simply called Byzantion. Byzantion is the pre-Constantinian, in other words, the pre-4th century name for Constantinople, which today, of course, is Istanbul.
Right.
Okay? So you could also talk about all these churches as being churches of the Constantinopolitan tradition.
And just to take this back to the very elementary, because I think those who are encountering East and West for the first time, and the Orthodox, and it can be awfully confusing. In my understanding, and I'd like you to elaborate on this, all of these churches sprang from the first apostles. Each of them claim apostolic succession from those first apostles. John Paul II here standing in the place of Peter. There is a Greek Orthodox who stands in the place of Timothy, I believe, in the Holy Land. Constantinople and
traces its roots to the mission of St. Andrew.
St. Andrew. Right. Tell us now where are we at this point with these offshoots? Are they not apostolic?
Well, what you need to understand in the case of some of the controversies among the Orthodox, because that's what you're obviously talking about here.
Yes.
You're talking about a situation in which, as sometimes happened tragically in human history, there are various political factors that enter into the discussion of whether an Orthodox church is canonical or not canonical. To give you, or to make this more precise, the three Orthodox churches of Ukraine all share the same faith. They all share the same canons. They all share the same liturgy. The difference is that one recognizes Moscow, the other two don't. From a larger perspective, that should be inconsequential. In fact, there are many Orthodox in Ukraine who believe very strongly that Moscow should have granted self-rule to the Orthodox of Ukraine a long time ago. Because Ukraine now is an independent country, the tradition within Eastern Orthodox ecclesiology is that wherever you have an independent country with a viable Orthodox church, sooner or later, usually in many instances sooner, that church is then declared a self-governing, an autocephalous, a self-headed church. Now, of course, in the case of the Eastern Catholics in Ukraine, the Greek Catholics or Greco-Catholics, in North America we simply refer to them as Ukrainian Catholics, you're dealing with a situation where this church maintains many of the aspects of Orthodox ecclesiology in terms of synodal rule. There is a synod of the Greek Catholic Church in Ukraine which appoints bishops, which the Pope has to be notified about these appointments, but he does not actually make the appointments in Ukraine itself. Okay? But of course the difference is that this church in Ukraine, the Eastern Catholic Church in Ukraine, is not autocephalous in the sense that it is self-governing entirely, because of course it looks to Rome for communion and for the kind of governance that is mandated by Vatican I and Vatican II, which of course state that the Pope has the right to intervene even among the Eastern Catholics when there is a particular need, which is a real blessing.
And we really should let people understand, prior to the Great Schism, 10...
Well, this is, yeah, frequently people talk about 10... Yeah, people frequently talk about 1054.
Right.
I don't like that date. Most historians don't. I tend to date the schism to 1204, which is when the Crusaders sacked Constantinople. That's when the population at large had a profound sense that we're dealing with two different churches. The schism, however, already started evolving as early as the 9th century, you know.
Right.
Anyway.
But there was one church united by the apostolic succession, flourishing in both East and West, in their own rights, with their own cultural flavors. Then this schism took place at whatever point, driven by politics, if I'm getting it correct, as well as...
Well, there were theological differences that came into the mix. I really believe that the theological differences would not have really come to the fore in the way that they did if secular politics had not intervened. There's always a very, very strong secular, political, sociological dimension to these things. But you're absolutely right that in the first millennium, in spite of different problems at the periphery of the former Greco-Roman imperial realm, there was a form of Christendom in which Christians of the East and West were in communion with each other, which is the key element here. In other words, they had no problems receiving communion at each other's altars. That starts, I mean, we get the first bigger eruptions of problems in the 9th century, it escalates in the 11th century, it finally comes to pretty much a fixed alienation at the beginning of the 13th century.
When we come back from a break, I want to discuss with Father the prospects for unity now. What must the Pope do? What can he do to heal this rift and surmount the great distance of the last millennium? We will be back in a moment. This is EWTN's live coverage of John Paul II in Ukraine. We'll be back in a moment.